You likely don't need me to tell you how important it is to understand body language, both to be able to detect it in others and to be able to use it ourselves. Through the use of body language, we can become better communicators. We can engage, we can entertain, we can persuade, we can explain, we can sell, we can lie, we can detect lies, we can become more charismatic. And there's never been a time where these things have been more useful than they are right now. However, there was always a danger that this video would become a long list of different gestures and explanations. Crossed arms means X, crossed legs means Y. I didn't want it to become that. It's largely useless. What you need to remember is that body language is very dependent on context, individual differences, cultural differences, and it's not enough to just look for one aspect of body language and then to draw conclusions. You need to look for clusters of tells. You need to consider the broader context and what you know about that person. And that's why in this video I want to look more into the underlying explanation as to what causes us to communicate the way we do with our bodies. And by understanding this, hopefully you'll then be better able to draw your own conclusions, to understand the bigger picture rather than focusing on those granular details which may be misleading. So instead of telling you that rubbing the hands together means that you're anticipating something, I instead want you to understand why people rub their hands together in the first place. Hopefully that makes this video a little bit different from all the other body language videos out there. First then, where does body language come from? Why do we gesture and grimace and lurch when we're trying to employ our best poker faces? There are actually many reasons, and during my own research I found it helpful to categorise these into several groups. There is some crossover, and it's far from a perfect system, but it might help you too. These categories are communication, conscious, embodied cognition / unconscious communication, physiological, vestigial / preparatory, and learned. So the first reason we use body language is to communicate consciously. We intentionally employ the use of gestures, stances and facial expressions when we're trying to make a point or express ourselves. We might choose to point for emphasis, or we might choose to pull a silly face to imply humour. The second, embodied cognition, refers to a psychological theory seeking to explain the nature of thought. I've made videos and posts on this in the past, but essentially it's believed that we understand language and all concepts ultimately by visualising them and relating them to experiences we're familiar with. If I tell you I'm cold, you recall what coldness feels like through faint firings in your brain, and this way I've shared some of my experience with you. Likewise, when talking, we visualise in order to explain and describe what we mean to others. We might therefore also gesture or pull expressions to literally paint the picture and convey meaning in an unconscious manner. This also extends to the use of additional language that isn't planned, the choice of certain adjectives for instance. Body language arising from physiological factors refers to visible changes in the body that result from the production of certain neurotransmitters. That might mean shaking from adrenaline for instance, or flushing red when blood rushes to the face. This type of body language is perhaps the hardest to fake. Learned body language is closely related to both communicative and embodied cognition. These are gestures that have been learned over time and may be cultural or functional. For instance, the first time a baby reaches for something and a parent hands it to them, they learn that they can gesture towards things that they want. Similarly, we learn to smile at people as we pass, we might learn to bow when meeting our superiors depending on our cultural background, etc. Finally, vestigial or preparatory are those body language traits that would have served a purpose during our evolution and have since stuck around. For example, we furrow our brow when angry to protect our eyes in a fight, and we might point our feet towards an exit in preparation to run. We wouldn't engage in those behaviours in a modern situation, but the survival impulse is too strong. Again, this is hard to fake. So what can you do with all this information? The aim is to look out for situations where one or more of these aspects of body language provide useful information, without jumping to conclusions. In particular, when looking for signs that someone is concealing their true feelings, we should try to identify multiple aspects of their body language that can serve as tells. The more signs we can spot, the surer we can be of our conclusions. So for example, let's look at uncomfortable social situations. Let's say someone is uncomfortable in a situation or wants to leave a conversation. One thing we might look for is a foot pointing towards an exit. This is a vestigial behaviour in preparation for running or leaving. In fact, according to Joe Navarro, ex-FBI agent and author of What Everybody Is Saying, the feet are the most honest part of the body. The reason for this is that preparing to run has such strong survival value that it's very difficult to override. Not only that, but whereas we have learned to disguise our expressions, many of us forget to consider what we're doing with our feet, especially as they're often concealed under a table. But of course, it may just be that that person is comfortable in the position they're in. Their feet just so happen to be pointing towards an exit. Therefore, we also need to look for other potential signs that a person is not comfortable in that current conversation before we can draw a conclusion. To this end, we might look for the absence of isopraxism, body language mirroring. Normally, when we're establishing a good rapport with someone, we will unconsciously adopt their same positioning. If they should lean forwards, for example, then often we will do too. This is both a vestigial behaviour, as it would have helped improve social interactions for our ancestors, as well as an embodied cognitive one, as we can better understand the thoughts of someone else by adopting their same position and expressions. If someone is not comfortable in a social setting, they won't exhibit this behaviour. In fact, they might struggle to maintain eye contact with that person as they're effectively trying to block them out. So by looking for all these different signs together, we can then more confidently make the conclusion that that person is not comfortable in that conversation. Likewise, if someone stands very close to another person, invading their personal space, this is often a sign that they intend to follow up with an act of aggression. This is proxemics. But while this is true a lot of the time, we once again must keep in mind context and other signs. Did you know, for example, that according to the book Body Language, How to Read Others' Thoughts by Their Gestures by Alan Pease, our sense of personal space is dictated by both culture and upbringing. More specifically, those of us who grew up in densely populated spaces are used to standing closer to others than those of us from rural backgrounds, which makes sense when you think about it. Likewise, we might get closer to someone if we're feeling intimate, so we shouldn't instantly assume closeness means an upcoming altercation. So other signs to look out for in this instance might include a widening of the stance. This preparatory movement spreads the centre of gravity and readies us for action. You'd never see someone cross their legs unless they were very relaxed. With crossed legs, you're not ready to move, and if you're pushed, you're going to fall over. Likewise, we might expect to see physiological changes. The nostrils flare as the individual takes in more oxygen, their knuckles might tense, and the heart rate might increase, leading to subtle reddening of the skin. Now you can fairly safely presume that a fight is about to break out, and you can take the relevant action. So those are just some examples of how you might use an understanding of body language to read a person's intentions or beliefs. Hopefully, by understanding the root cause of these gestures and movements, you'll become better at drawing your own conclusions without the need for a huge long list of different gestures. But most people will read this and then forget all about it. Understanding body language and reading body language are two very different things. Most of us, myself definitely included, simply aren't observant enough to remember to do it. That's why if you're serious about learning to read people, you need to actively practice it. Think of it like a workout. Like any other workout, you'll take a slot of time every day or week and use it to actively watch for body language. If you commute to work, for instance, or go to coffee shops often, then these are perfect opportunities to practice your skills. Try to read the subtext in conversations you see around you. Just take a few minutes at a time, and eventually it'll start to become second nature. Another tip is to start very basic. One really easy question to ask in any situation to begin with is this person comfortable? The fight or flight response is one of the most difficult psychological responses to disguise, and it makes itself known in a host of interesting ways. Finally, keep in mind that we do have a kind of innate ability to read body language. You pick up on a lot of these tells unconsciously, so if you get an uneasy feeling that someone isn't being entirely truthful, maybe go with it. And this is also why I haven't delved into micro-expressions or osteolasics, eye movements, seeing as it would be pretty much useless in a practical setting, though I might cover these things in detail in future over at the website. Finally, as well as reading body language, there's also great merit in learning to control your own body language, and thereby to better express yourself and manage the impressions that you make. If you want to appear more confident, then adopting relaxed poses, taking up more physical space, using haptics, that means touching people for instance on the shoulder, and avoiding pacifying behaviours or nervous tics, will do the trick. If you want to get someone to like you, subtly mirroring their body language can also go a long way and make you more persuasive. And if you want to come across as more charismatic and engaging, then you should use larger gesticulations and really embody the story you're trying to convey. Pause for dramatic effect and use visual storytelling. Gesticulations make us seem more engaging because we look like we really believe in what we're saying, which makes us seem genuine and makes the message seem more important. At the same time, it's also easier to follow us and to really picture the narrative being conveyed. The problem though is that trying to force these things will very often come across as fake or unsettling, and can ultimately have the opposite effect to that which is intended. You might be able to control what you're saying, to handle your gestures, and to avoid nervous habits, but it might be much harder to control your physiological response, and if you're shaking or flushing, then that can give the game away. The answer might be to take genuine control over your own cognitive and physiological processes. In other words, we appear calm and confident by controlling our breathing and training ourselves to thrive in stressful situations. And we appear more charismatic by genuinely enjoying the company we're in and really believing in what we're saying. And if you don't know how to achieve those things, then there are a few things you can do. Meditation might help, practice definitely helps, acting lessons or stand-up comedy can help, and cognitive behavioural therapy is very useful. So thanks a ton for watching, guys. I hope you found this video useful and interesting. If you did, then please leave a like down below, please comment and share it around. All those things help me out immensely. Let me know if I've missed any cool tricks or tells that you use when you're reading or using body language. I've got lots more cool stuff on the way. I am getting to the Nightwing training video very soon. I'm going to be looking at how to jump higher, going to be looking at how to increase your work capacity. I've got some more cool legends that we're going to learn from. You can vote on who I cover next over at the Patreon, but currently Da Vinci, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and a couple of others are doing quite well in that vote. I'm going to be looking at Shaolin training, who the most effective warrior cultures were, and I've got a video coming very soon on my YouTube business and how to earn money through YouTube. So if that all sounds cool, then thanks a ton for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye for now. I want to explain why we rub our hands together like I mentioned at the beginning. The reason is likely because we interact with things physically using our hands, and we certainly always did back when we were in the wild. Therefore, you rub your hands in anticipation because, well, basically you're priming the things you're going to use to grab that thing.